All right. Thank you, everyone, who has joined us at the moment. Welcome to the second day of the Life Ready, Work Ready programme with STEMPOINT East and STEM Ambassadors and the New Anglia Enterprise Advisor Network. Today, we're going to be focusing on the technology sector. We've got three fantastic speakers for you who are going to be delivering a talk for 20 minutes. And then we've apportioned 5 minutes for some questions. So if you do have any questions for them, please feel free to put those into the chat. We'll be monitoring that, and then we'll be putting those to our speakers today. Also, at the end of the program, there's a 5-minute Q&A panel session. So again, we'll be able to put some of those, you'll be able to interact with the three guests that we have today and be able to put those questions to them as well. Just wanted to say that these sessions will be recorded as well, so they will be available after the program and will be distributed probably towards the end of next week. We will also be coming out with surveys next week as well, so you can give us your comments and feedback as well. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to the three guests who are joining us today, in case I forget at the end. Our first speaker that we have with us today is Tom Robinson, who is the CEO of Tech East, and he's going to be kicking us off today. So welcome, Tom, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, Glenn. Well, thanks very much. It's good to be here. And hi, everybody. Good to see some familiar names in the attendees. Hopefully some of you will know a little of this, and lots of you won't, and this will be all new. So, without further ado, I'll kick off. So, yeah, I'm Tim Robinson, and I'm CIO of Tech East. Tech East is an organisation looking to accelerate the growth of the digital tech sector in the east of England, and a key part of that is clearly engaging with the workforce that's required to drive the success of businesses in the sector. We are very pleased to be working as part of this event. And what I'm going to do as a sort of scene setter over the next 20 minutes is to just kind of give some insights into, sort of tech skills, ICT digital skills, not just within the tech sector, but perhaps within the wider economy, especially just thinking a little bit about what's happened over the last year or so. And the acceleration of digital adoption by organisations as a result of prompted by COVID, although those are things, trends that were happening already, but also just to talk a little bit about what's going on in the region, particularly in Norfolk and Suffolk, and to talk about what we are doing as an organisation at Tech East, but working with a wide range of partners to try and enable the pipeline, if you like, of skills coming into the employment market to improve, to broaden the pathways into industry, and some of the projects that are sort of exciting projects that are happening at the moment. And I'm sure some of the other speakers will talk about them too. But I haven't got any slides. I'm just going to speak, so as it were, from a few notes. And I hope people find this interesting. If there are any kind of data points in what I say that people are interested in kind of referring back to, I'm really, really happy to share some slides off the back of this event. So please let us know if you'd like to see some of that information. So yeah, as I say, I think just the first a bit of sort of definition. The tech sector, which I would describe as businesses that where their kind of primary product or service is a digital product or service, typically based on software of one sort or another, is really only part of the picture, I think, this afternoon, because although that industry is very significant, I mean, in Norfolk and Suffolk alone, there's a workforce of well over 23,000 in the tech sector. It's a sector that contributes at least 1.5 million to the regional economy. It is, it's a big, important, growing sector. Although, of course, I'm biased because Tech East is an organisation absolutely designed to support that sector. But that's kind of only half the equation, or less than half, because the other great chunk of this is digital roles, digital tech roles outside of the tech sector. So whether it's in financial services, the public sector, manufacturing, energy, food and drink, tourism, retail, you name it. There are lots and lots of other digital tech jobs or tech related jobs in the region. And some, at a high level in the UK, there's roughly 1 million jobs in digital tech businesses. There are roughly 2 million digital tech jobs in industries of all kinds, so roughly double. And then there are probably about 100,000 sort of software development, data science, what I would say sort of say core tech roles in total. So just breaking it down from the top, we think about 2 million UK jobs of a digital variety, 1 million jobs in the sector, and then 100,000 jobs actually in the region. So thinking back to Norfolk and Suffolk's market size, we've got 23,000 of those jobs. So it is a significant one, and we're one of the more I'd say more vibrant, fastest growing sectors and tech clusters in the UK, which is great. And it does mean that there are lots of opportunities for young people or adult learners to upskill and enter the profession, or to reskill and enter the profession. But clearly the competition for the demand for digital jobs has increased over the last year, as lots and lots of industries have sought to digitize more quickly. Just think about high street retail, hospitality businesses, tourism businesses. They've all seen increased demand for digital skills. So what's really important is that as a region, we're able to match, I think, that demand for employment, which is growing, with a really good variety of talent in the marketplace. And we've got some great talent clearly coming through schools, colleges and universities. But there is a problem, and the problem in a nutshell is that there's a gap. So we've estimated, working with New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership, that there are going to be around 10,000 unfilled job vacancies, whether they're brand new roles or replacement roles, by 2024. So in other words, in 3 years' time, we as a region, through education, training and skills provision, we need to create another 10,000 people who are ready for work, and that's a big challenge. So as a direct result of that, a skills plan for the digital tech sector was created about 3.5 years ago. So the New Anglia Digital Tech Skills Plan has a lot to say about this, and it's worth kind of Googling that and downloading it if you haven't read it or aren't familiar with the skills plan. But it really talked about 3 priorities for us as a region. I mean, one, and I think this is key, and this is one of the reasons I'm very pleased to be here today, is to ensuring that this question of how do we develop local skills for the market is a real two-way conversation between employers and skills providers and education. Secondly, that we really try hard to widen and diversify the pipelines into the tech industry. So not just, for example, graduate recruitment with 2 years experience, but also really working hard to make apprenticeships work and attract and be attractive for businesses, whether they're SMEs or levy payers. And for that matter, to make apprenticeships attractive to young people, to their parents, and to raise awareness. And it's probably fair to say that digital apprenticeships have not taken off in the way I think the government hoped that they would do. So the numbers are still quite low. And then thirdly, and this is very pertinent to clearly where we're at now, possibly slightly less relevant, certainly for the thinking about the careers leadership, schools leadership, sixth form college leadership, but probably quite relevant to FE college leadership, would be to think about upskilling and reskilling people who are already in work but don't have the digital skills that are going to be needed to drive economic growth and business success. So those 3 priorities. And there are, there are some issues. I've talked about apprenticeships. I think it's probably widely known that GCSE computing science, for example, is only taught in a relatively small number of schools in Norfolk and Suffolk, enrolments had certainly stagnated. There are some great initiatives going on to upskill teachers to be able to teach computer science. There's a hub in West Suffolk College, for example, and there's another hub in Norfolk, working hard to enable that to happen through CPD and short training interventions. I think this isn't a problem that's unique to this region at all. It's really across the whole of the UK and globally, is that there is this talent supply scarcity. So it's a large scale problem for our industry. And I think that there is still a bit of a perception, probably among employers, that the best, that the best recruitment pipeline for them remains kind of graduates with at least 2 years core experience, although that is changing. And apprenticeships is one example. Obviously, T-levels coming in is another example of where we're trying to, across the UK, address these issues. And I think another area that's really interesting, and some of you may have seen the announcement from government recently, there's a government call out at the moment to create tech boot camps across the UK, which would essentially be fast track training courses for people wanting to get into tech, that will provide them with a non-accredited outcome, or maybe some sort of certificate, but not necessarily a full, as it were, a full year's study, or an undergraduate degree, or a level 4, level 5 equivalent. I mean, there's been a big shift towards this sort of fast track boot camp training, and it is one that's important. And I'm pleased to say that there are some really good activities going on in Norfolk and Suffolk around this already. There's the Creative Computing Club in Suffolk, for example, based in Ipswich, doing some wonderful things with really engaging young people at school age to become creative technologists. There are also, there's a scheme running out of Wymondham, Norfolk, called the Science Coalition scheme, run by Net Matters, which again is very much about fast tracking people through a kind of employment ready boot camp to be able to actually code and develop software and all of those good things. But there's more work that needs to be done. So, we've got a skills plan. We have a digital tech skills task force, which operates operates within Tech East, and is co-sponsored by the Local Enterprise Partnership, New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership, through its Industry Council for Digital Tech. So this is known to be an important issue. We are trying to do a lot about it, but there's more work to be done. And one very good piece of good news, or 4 bits of good news, I think, is that there are some great projects now underway in the region, in no particular order, although Carol from BT is on the call. We have the University of Suffolk and BT Adaplay Park and Innovation Martlesham working in partnership to develop a new Digitech Centre at Adaplay Park to cover Digitech education. We have a Digitech factory being built at City College, Norwich. We've got a wonderful new manufacturing and engineering technology centre of excellence being built at UEA, called Productivity East, and we have some new facilities being developed at Suffolk New College. So there is a suite of activity going on at the moment, funded by a number of organisations, including the LEP, to really attack these issues at scale. So kind of, I've talked a little bit about the kind of context, about the size of the market, the skills plan, some of the things that are happening. I mean, I think just to sort of play back, and I'm just conscious, I want to make sure we've got time for questions after all the other speakers. But just to kind of land a few things here, you know, I mean, some employer feedback on digital skills has been, you know, for example, that new graduates don't have all the key competencies required by business. I'm not just talking about the soft skills, but I'm also talking about some of the actual core technical skills. So, for example, you can do a degree in computer science, but nevertheless not have a vast amount of coding experience, given that one is an academic degree and another is a sort of, as it were, a practical skill. So there is an increasing demand for people who can actually code, hence a lot of this activity. I think also industry values sort of non-traditional certifications. So whether they come from organizations like Microsoft or Cisco or Amazon Web Services. So these sort of vocational, practical, technical certifications that don't necessarily traditionally get delivered through the, you know, as it were, the traditional education system. They are important. I think there's also an awareness within universities that they continually need to work to demonstrate that higher education in tech is relevant to market needs. And so in a way, I think the trend is that it's sort of pushing it down into, you know, into colleges, earlier and earlier into the sort of pipeline. And I think, you know, one of the things that we want to make it easy for schools and careers leaders to do is to understand what some of these requirements actually are. And as I said right at the outset, you know, I think there is a nuance here between, you know, tech jobs in the tech industry, tech jobs in the wider market, and probably non-tech jobs in the tech industry is really important to mention too. Because again, you know, you can't run a successful tech business without really good salespeople, without really good marketing people, without good project managers, without good finance people. And there is some sort of specific domain knowledge that goes around running a tech company, you know, because of the business models that they have, the fact that they do use a lot of technology, the fact that sometimes it's a complex sale, that do require people from the humanities and social sciences, as well as from the you know, sort of STEM subject areas to be part of their workforces. So I think, you know, I'll probably land on that as a sort of as a concluding point. I think it's a big, exciting market. The market has shifted in terms of what it means probably in the last year more than ever, towards a recognition that it's not just a sector in isolation, but really the whole of industry. And you know, we are here as techies to hopefully help enable those conversations between education and skills providers and between employers. And on that note, I'll probably stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Really appreciate your thoughts there as well. Just a couple of comments from me before we see if there are any questions. So the Digital Skills Plan is available on the New Anglia LEP website. If you want to have a look at that, as I said, as Tim mentioned, there is lots of information in there, and looking at some of the pathways as well of how to go into the sector. Obviously, visit the Tech East website as well. There's further information there as well. Tim will be staying with us, so he will be available for some panel questions towards the end. I can just see in the chat at the moment we don't have anything at the moment, so if you just want to give some thought to potential questions, as I say, Tim will be with us at the end after we've heard from the next two speakers. So I just want to go to Carol now. Thank you for joining us today, Carol. Carol is the Head of Academic and Research Partnerships at BT, and she's going to give us a presentation now as well. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much, Glenn. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully that will work. It'd be slightly embarrassing on a technology call if I can't get that to work. So hopefully that's working. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what BT does. You probably already have a fairly good idea of that. And I'm also just going to talk about how we're trying to nurture the next generation of technologists. And it really follows on an awful lot from the sorts of things that that Tim has just shared with us. So just to start off with, what does BT do? I think most people probably think of us as the people who do the phones and the internet and the Wi-Fi and the broadband, but also now that, you know, we're a TV operator as well. We have BT TV and BT Sport, but our purpose as a company is about connecting people, and it's about connecting them for good. So I think over the last year, we've all really seen the need to connect, particularly to enable people to carry on working, to enable education to continue. So our purpose as a company is really about making those connections and enabling people to do the things that they need to do, whether that's work, education, or leisure. Although we have British in our title, we are a global company, so we have a presence in 180 countries around the world. And I come from the sort of the research and technology side of BT, and our main research and technology presence is actually in Suffolk, in Adaplay Park, which is just outside of Ipswich on the A12. If ever you've driven up the A12, you cannot fail to have missed our striking tower, I would call it. I'm not sure it's necessarily a thing of great beauty, but it's certainly striking. But as well as our research presence there, we also have operations in the US, in the Middle East, in India, in China, and in Northern Ireland too. But the main one is in Adaplay Park. So Adaplay Park is very much about more than just BT. So it's home normally, in normal circumstances, to about 4,000 people every day. About 3,000 of them work for BT, and the other 1,000 work for 150 and climbing other ICT companies who are based with us on the park in something called Innovation Martlesham. And that's actually the largest cluster of ICT companies in the UK. And they're all based with us because they recognise that it's good sometimes to be near other companies who do similar things to you or do complementary things to you in order to help your business grow. So there's a lot of opportunity for people with digital skills to have digital and technology careers in this area, thanks to things like Innovation Martlesham. That it really is an ecosystem at Adaplay Park. So as mentioned, it's not just BT. We have a range of quite unusual in some cases facilities that we have many visitors every year, about 60,000 visitors, including usually about 8,000 students from schools and colleges. So we have testing facilities for things like 5G, for drone testing. We have a quantum network link. We have all sorts of specialist labs, and we also have a showcasing facility where we can show the art of the possible with technology. So we are, you know, very much a place where it's possible to have a technology career, but there are very many different types of technology career that you can have there. Okay, so described it as an ecosystem. So I want to talk a little bit about how we are trying to sort of feed and nurture that ecosystem to make sure that we have the right skills to take advantage of the opportunities out there. So something that that Tim touched on really nicely. Every year you see in the news, it usually happens around GCSE and A-level results time, stories like this. So graduates don't have the right skills, school leavers aren't work ready. It's like a sort of an annual cycle of something that always happens. And I think it's really unhelpful, because it's all well and good for us in industry to sort of sit and point the finger and say, well, you know, the people we're getting into us don't have the right kinds of skills. But I think we have a responsibility to work with education providers, whether they're schools, whether they're colleges, whether they're universities, to help them to understand what are those skills that we're looking for? What do we need in the next generation? And also to sort of really lean in and help them to develop, you know, those skills in those young people. And I think in industry, we're actually quite bad sometimes at articulating and explaining what actually it is that we need. It's easy to say it's not that, but well, what really is it? So I thought I'd try and explain what, the kinds of things that we're looking at. First is we need people to have some fundamental sort of science or technology skill. And I don't mean that everybody needs to have a PhD. Okay, there are many different types of careers in technology or involving technology. So that qualification, those building blocks might be GCSEs, they might be T levels, BTECs, A levels, it might be a degree or a PhD. There's lots of different places to start from. So we need them to have a bit of sort of fundamental understanding of the science. And then we need something which is what I describe as the so what. So it's great to know about science and technology, but what's really important is actually being able to understand what's it going to do for us, what's difference is it going to make to people's lives, how can it be used? And then also really importantly, how do you then explain that to somebody who's not necessarily in your field? So you might have this really great new piece of artificial intelligence that you think is going to change the world, but you need to really be able to explain that in the right way to somebody who's not necessarily an expert. And then finally, there are some other kind of characteristics that I think make a good technologist. So one of them is you need to be curious. You need to have a kind of a desire to understand how do things work, why do they work the way that they do. The second thing is you really need to be adaptable. The pace of change, I think we've all seen that. I'm just thinking back, what was life like 5, 10, even 20 years ago? The pace of change is really relentless. You know, there are constant changes to technology, new types of technologies, new ways of doing things, new ways of working. So I think we really need young people starting out in their careers to be really adaptable. And we also need them to have a bit of resilience, because we all know that in life there can be knockbacks, and if you're working in technology, it can feel almost like a bit of a personal slight if the thing that you've been working on is suddenly it's kind of being taken out of commission, or it's something different has been chosen over it. So we need people to be resilient. So want to sort of talk about something that's actually a concept from the world of business improvement, and it's called the purple people. So the way to think about this is, if you think about science and technologists and engineers as being red people, so they are really good at science, really good at engineering and technology, and then you get other people who you might describe as blue people. This is no indication of anybody's political kind of leanings, and they are people, the business people, so they might be finance people, they might be marketing people or sales people. And one of the things you often find in an organization is both of these types of people exist, but there's a little bit of a gulf between them in terms of understanding each other, and sometimes what they're talking about, where other people are coming from. But what we often see are people that I would describe as purple people, who are really quite successful in organizations, and that's because they can see the point of view of the other side. So they might be a scientist or an engineer who can just kind of also understand, well, what's my science, what's my engineering going to do, how is it going to change the world? And so they can help explain it to the business people and make sure that something happens with it. Or they might be a business person who's got a bit of an interest in technology, so they can see what problems the business is having, and they can then start to think about, well, what kind of technology might help to solve that, or they can maybe explain it better to the engineers and scientists. So we definitely need some purple people in our organization. We still need the red people and the blue people, but also the purple people. And another thing that I would say is that we need to sort of, when we talk about careers, often we talk about or. So we say, do you want to be a plumber or a doctor or a nurse, or actually what we should be saying is and. The way that careers are going is there's such a blurring of things that people do. People often have to sort of change direction partway through their career. So somebody might start out doing one thing, but you might start out being a data scientist, but you might get really interested in some of the legal and ethical aspects of it. So then you might need to understand a bit more about things like sociology or politics or law. There's always an and. We have people who are, are very much technologists and computer programmers, but they design user interfaces, so they need to understand around things like psychology and how humans interact with technology. So again, it's an and, it's not an or anymore. And so I've talked about kind of what do we think we need. I want to sort of share some of the things that we are doing, and we are trying very hard to engage with local education and to really help so that people understand the opportunities that are available, but also to help nurture that next generation and to really lean into kind of building skills. So sort of talk about some of the things that we do. And before I do that, I just want to mention something called science capital. So you've probably all heard of cultural capital. So science capital is a bit like that. So you can think about it as a bag, and in that bag you carry around all of your science experiences. And it could be what you know about science, what you've learned at school or college. It could be whether you know anybody who does any science, whether it's something you're interested in and you do in your spare time. Maybe you've got a parent who's interested. And so we all have all of our science experiences. We carry them around in our bag, and we have a sort of level of science capital. And there are different elements that make that up. And if you look at, this is a survey from 2014, so a little bit out of date, but the numbers are still similar, in that if you look at teenagers, or 11 to 15-year-olds in this case, and measure their science capital, very few of them have high science capital. And the ones that do have high science capital tend to be overwhelmingly male and white. And we know that people with higher science capital are more likely to go into a job in technology or involving technology. So all of those great opportunities that Tim was talking about in the region, if people don't have the sort of the confidence and the understanding of what kind of career that might be, they're not going to take those opportunities. So what we're always trying to do is in our activities with schools and with colleges and universities is to try and boost the science capital, boost how people feel about science and its relevance particularly to them. So we work across the education system, right from primary school through secondary school into universities. And we're trying to do a number of things. We're trying to really, at primary school level, we run lots of face-to-face events in normal times to try and really excite the students about science and computing as something they can do. It's interesting and it's fun. And also really, really importantly, to start to say, and show them this is how it applies to your, to real life. So you've just been doing a bit of computer coding to maybe make a robot move, and that same kind of coding is the kind of thing that makes, Minecraft or Roblox that you might like to play at home work. It's the same sort of thing that makes your, technology that makes your Wi-Fi work at home. We try to really make those links. And then at secondary level, it's about inspiring. So inspiring with the kinds of careers you might have both in technology, but also if you have a different kind of career, to understand how technology will impact that. So you might decide you want to work in the creative arts, or on the music industry. And if you look at how those kinds of industries are now, there's huge amounts of technology used by the people in them. So even people who don't have a career in technology will still need to be using technology. And I think everyone who's lived through the pandemic and suddenly had to work from home and be on Zoom or Teams or Google Meet or whatever it is for most of the day will realize that technology is just absolutely in every job. You might have a job in the future where you want to have a website, where you want to do some online trading. Again, that's you need to have some appreciation of technology in order to do that. I mentioned earlier on that we had 8,000 students typically come and visit us every year and take part in some of our activities. You're probably thinking, well, you're probably not doing that right now, are you? You'll be absolutely right, we aren't. So what we've done is we've flipped to doing some virtual activities. So we've got, and I will make sure the link goes around, we've got a website, and on the website we've got some of our experts who've recorded some videos talking about some of the kinds of science and technology that students might be learning at school. It's more aimed at the secondary level. And how that applies to what they're doing. So we've got someone who talks about what Wi-Fi is and relates that to, to electromagnetic waves and how that works. We've got somebody who uses his pool table and Lego to explain how you get TV services or video over the internet. And we've also got some of our sort of younger new entrants who are new apprentices or graduates talking about what it was like for them to have an interview. How did they prepare for their interview? How did they prepare for an assessment centre? So we're also hitting that sort of career side of things to sort of give people some advice while we can't go out and see them. And we are doing things like virtual careers sessions for schools if schools and colleges are interested, and they've been quite successful so far. Okay, so this is again playing back to something that Tim said earlier. There's absolutely not one size fits all. We really have a diverse approach to bringing in people into our technology careers. So just as an example, my MD, who is in charge of all of BT's research on all of Adaplay Park, joined BT as a 16-year-old engineering apprentice. He climbed telegraph poles. He worked down the kind of holes in the ground, and he's now a professor and he runs BT's research. And it is very possible to do that. So we bring in people as apprentices, we bring in them as graduates, and we also bring in postgraduates, so people who've done masters or PhD degrees. And when they come in, again, there's no one size fits all. They might go into a role where they stay in that role if that's what suits them. They might go into a role where they rotate around, where we do secondments, so they can get some broader experience, so they can try out some different things. We're really keen on supporting people through further qualifications, be they academic things like master's qualifications or part-time PhDs, or whether they're professional qualifications like some of the sort of certifications that you can get in the tech industry. Professional accreditation, so things like chartered and status for engineering people. And we're also really keen on volunteering, because those sort of softer skills that Tim again touched on earlier, you can't teach somebody those kinds of skills. You get them through experience, and experience of doing things like volunteering as part of our school's program, or volunteering out to do things in the community, whatever that might be. We know they are really great ways of kind of building some of those kinds of skills around communication, around leadership, and all of those sorts of things with our people. So I just wanted to touch on this, and Tim mentioned it earlier. Thank you, Tim. So the New Anglia Let funded University of Suffolk to have a new Digitech Centre, which is going to be on site at Adaplay Park. They have been getting everything ready during all of the various lockdowns we have, but obviously no one is on site there at the moment in there. the idea of this is it's a new centre, part of the university, and it will offer academic and also professional courses in scarce skills, so in skill areas like cybersecurity and data science, and they will be for people who want to study them, say, at degree level, but they will also be offering courses for people who might have had a completely different career, done something very different, and then want to change, so they can kind of do a conversion course to do something like AI or data science. It's going to be very much embedded in Adastrol Park at the heart of it, and it's all about them working with all of the industry around, not just in Adastrol, not just in Suffolk, but the whole of East Anglia, and understanding what are their needs and really responding to those. And anyone going there on site will have access to all the sorts of facilities that I mentioned earlier that we have at Adastrol, so all of the kinds of specialist labs. If required, they'll be able to meet and talk to the people and really understand some of the possibilities of a career in technology. So just to sum up, we are very passionate about nurturing the next generation of technologists. We're working very hard on that. It's not straightforward. I don't think we're always, we don't always get it right. And I'm very happy to take any questions now or in the panel session at the end about what we do or how you might engage further with us or any of the opportunities available.
Thank you very much, Carol. That was very informative. I do see a question in the Q&A section, so let me just feed that one through. When will the first intake be for the university at Adastrol Park, please? And that's from Liz.
So it's managed by the University of Suffolk. I know one of the courses they started this January, which was a conversion course for people who wanted to convert to careers in AI, would have been at the Digitech Centre, but obviously because of the lockdowns, that's happening virtually. I think as soon as people can kind of get back onto site, they'll come back onto site. But with the university, you would need to apply to the University of Suffolk for the course, and then some of that would be taught either partly or wholly at Adastrol. So.
Great. Thank you very much, Carol. I can't see any other questions at the moment, but I think people are just reserving those for the panel session. So I'm just going to go across to our next speaker now, then, who is Sam Rawlings. Thank you for joining us, Sam.
No problem at all.
Sam is the partnership manager at Adaplay. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah,
Thank you,
right.
Sam. Great. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Sam again. Thank you very much for your time today, Sam.
No problem at all. Yep. So as Glenn introduced, my name's Sam Rawlings. I'm the co-founder and the partnerships manager at Adaplay Esports. I'll just kind of give a bit of an introduction about myself, just to kind of show where my career in esports came from. Then hopefully it can kind of branch off into how to establish a career in esports or where these opportunities may arise. So as many of us have been, or our children or co-workers, everyone's been involved in games in some way. Pretty much, it's a giant market. It's as estimated to be about $80 billion in the past few years. So it's completely massive. So most people are fully aware of it. But esports, not so much. It's more niche. It's not as globally mainstream. So pretty much as soon as I found out about esports and that there is kind of a competitive scene to gaming, which pretty much is the definition of esports. It's playing a game competitively against others. I founded my own organization in 2016 called Click Esports. I did this when I was working part-time at Ernst & Young as an accountant. And while doing this, it was a complete startup, very little experience. All I knew was that, I wanted to be involved in the esports industry some way, as many people do. And you'll find that there are a lot of people who do find their own organizations. And I don't think a lot of people realize that their passion, or essentially them getting a few friends together and creating an organization, is actually, it is a step towards developing a business. And it does take very similar steps into doing that. So through that, I've managed to compete. Well, our teams have managed to compete across the world in multiple titles. At the very peak level. Recently, we competed in Krakow in Poland in Apex for a couple of $1 million in the prize pool, and that's still going on as it is. So like I say, it is very big. There are a lot of teams and across the world involved, and a lot of money. So through that experience, I joined Adaplay. I was introduced to Dowda, who did found Adaplay after conducting programming workshops in schools, and he found that children naturally in a computer programming game would compete against each other for scores, and the children seemed very, very invested in competing for those scores, a bit more than they were necessarily in the programming. And through that, we've all come together and decided that esports is perhaps something that's lacking in schools, and something that, you know, kids would very much like to participate in. So our goal with Adaplay is to create a safe and inclusive environment for school students to compete. At the moment, we're running a school league for children aged between 13 and 18. And through that, you know, we do want to give them something to do, something to compete, something to re-engage students that, you know, may not be, you know, hitting attendance, or maybe misbehaving in ways that the school doesn't deem acceptable, to kind of pursue something and feel passion for something which they can achieve through school, and meeting good grades and good attendance, and, you know, getting something out of it that could potentially be life-changing. So going through the general careers in esports, obviously the first one that's going to come to everyone's mind is being a professional player. You know, it's the same thing as being Cristiano Ronaldo in football. There's going to be that elite 0.001%. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it does actually go very much beyond that. Being a professional player is very hard to achieve. It requires a lot of hours. And those who are at the peak level of that, there is a lot of money in that. So in total prize money, the most earned overall from a single person is $7 million. That comes from a game called Dota 2, which most recently had a tournament of $40 million prize pool. But even taking out prizes, now athletes are earning between 1,000 to 5,000 per month on average, in thousands of dollars. Obviously, this is a very big step from what we saw maybe 5 years ago when I first founded my first organization. I have to say we still very much had a negative stigma, or at least we had that picture of the guy alone in his room in the dark playing games 24 hours a day. For now, it being something that is considered, you know, esport is branching off of a sport. A lot of people compare it to darts and say darts isn't necessarily very physically demanding, and then they say esports is similar to that. And there has been talks about, you know, an esports style Olympics, or even putting it in the Olympics, which, you know, is quite a controversial opinion to some, but, you know, it is very much being considered a legitimate sport, as well as giving way to a legitimate industry, as you can imagine from that. So a lot of people may think when you're done as a player, or, you know, you don't have what it takes to be a player, that's maybe the end of the career, or there's not much you can do other than that. But if we look at an individual called Carlos Rodriguez, he was a professional player for League of Legends. He was never really successful. He started his own brand called G2 Esports, and this is now one of the largest and most successful organizations of the past few years. They have 1.1 million followers on Twitter, and this is just since 2015. So this is someone who's maybe competed, you know, professionally for a couple of years, and then down the line just said, you know what, I'm not quite good. I'm going to start my own esports business, and with no real, you know, business background or necessarily the right education to do so. In 5 years, he's created essentially an empire with, you know, multi-million pound brand deals and broadcasts and social media, you know, just as you expect a normal business or a normal entertainment business to do. So that's kind of where people will go, or kind of see the player aspect about the careers and that. But what we want to teach to students who may not necessarily want to be a player themselves is that esports now has the opportunity of any other business in which there are there's content creation, digital art, journalism, marketing, finance, sales, everything that you'd expect, you know, of your own company to be in esports. And that's kind of something I have personally seen as an organization owner myself. So in schools, we want to teach students that you don't necessarily have to dedicate everything to esports. You can pursue your own career. You can pursue, if you're good at maths, you know, you may be interested in finance, you know, bookkeeping, accountancy, as I did myself. That is a legitimate esports career as well now. you may not have any interest in joining, one of the big four firms, but you may have your favorite esports team, and you think, look, I can work with them personally, as I have these skills which you're looking for as a business, and I can be a part of that. Well, not necessarily having to dedicate my whole life to playing games, which I'm sure, obviously, a lot of parents and also a lot of students may not consider, the best use of their time. So there's many ways in which they can do that themselves, but sitting home and playing games isn't just what we'd expect to be a time killer or a waste of resources. A lot of people are just staying home playing games and making a lot of money from it just purely through streaming. It's as simple as one individual clicking start stream and being available to anyone all over the world to come view, and they can donate money or pay a subscription to support their content creator. And it's this type of thing where you don't necessarily need to be an entertainer. It's just people who are talented at these games can have this kind of side job where you're not just doing it for your own entertainment, you are entertaining others as well. And with streams, there's a good chance of being picked up by an organization such as my own Click and forming a partnership through that. And that's when the brand deals come into place. We are partnered ourselves with MSI, who do computer peripherals as well as computer hardware. And this is a benefit for players as they receive these peripherals, etc., as well as normally a paid contract. And so with that, like I say, it's really turning a hobby into something more of a business. So with Adaplay, what we want is to break that negative stigma, or more or less educate people on how easy it is for people to get involved in esports. Just by having people play in our tournaments, we want them to be aware, not just as a player. You can be a coach for these players with very little experience. We want to make them aware of, for example, social media managing is a very big one for startups and brand new organizations. And a lot of these organizations aren't looking for relatively big experience. They're given this kind of volunteer basis opportunities to students, or people, like I said, with very little experience, to come and kind of nurture their own ability. And I think that's what makes esports very unique, is that they don't necessarily need an experience or something. You don't need an esports degree, although you can get them now to participate in anything esports related. Your own experiences and your own knowledge can be used in a way that does open up pathways in esports. And through that, you can get into becoming one of the very large esports organizations that are around. For example, Excel Esports, and Mo Carroll may be aware, they are actually partnered with BT now. Only a few years ago, Excel were very they were founded just in a pub between two friends, just something they'd want to do with their spare time. And it's the way that most esports organizations go. It's a startup, it's grassroots, and simply just having that interest or wanting to take part is enough to build a full career from that. So our main goal at the end of the day is just to have students aware that there is this whole world of esports available to them, other than, you don't have to be the most talented player in the world. You don't have to be Ninja, who many people are aware of as a multi-million-dollar streamer. Just having this passion or this dedication, which a lot of students do have, and it may be for broadcasting or writing, for being a journalist or social media. You don't need to go and really focus heavily on one career path and find that the business for that. Look to esports organizations and what they can offer, and hopefully that is going to be able to give them a career down the line. So yeah, like I said, there's many things that you can do which aren't being a player, but other than that, there is coaches and analysts very, very niche things, which, like I said, it isn't necessarily something you would learn in school, but from a child's experience or a student's experience from playing games, they may have all this knowledge inside of them that can't be applied to your specific general subjects. It's actually going to be something that can only really be applied through esports or given the opportunity for a career through esports. Although it may not look like it, there are things such as nutritionists or chefs or even just fitness and psychologists. All these things are now considered a legitimate career in esports, and all the top teams do have these nutritionists and chefs and workout instructors, just people who are going to try and make gaming professionals seem a bit more legit and be at the top of their health. Like I said, it's not just kind of a niche anymore or a hobby. It is very much a career, and you will see that by looking at the top level of competition, where millions and millions of dollars are given away in prize pools and millions of people do watch. So that's basically just all I want to talk about. I know it's not too much, but it's just want to give the advice of letting students pursue the career of esports and not turn a blind eye to the industry that is there, although it is still in its infancy and not as large as the gaming industry as a whole. Esports does offer a lot of opportunities which do fit in with certain subjects and studies. For example, like IT or programming, there is a direct link to esports there. And I think hopefully through our mission, we will have a lot more schools take that on board and consider that. And then hopefully one day we'll be treating esports teams the same as we treat football teams, or school rugby teams will be a school esports team. And that's what we want to do at Adaplay. Just create this inclusive, safe environment for students where we can help bring esports to the light which it needs to be seen as, and hopefully make this very aware to everyone. So I think that's all I really have for today. Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Sam. Very, very informative. I have to say, a sector that I'm not too aware of, and I found that really useful. When you mentioned about Ninja being a well-known streamer and earning lots of millions, it was a name that wasn't familiar to me. So it shows that I need to do a little bit more research.
I'm sure there's plenty of questions on it as well, because I'm more than happy to answer them, because like I say, it's not something that everyone's very well known about, but obviously I've lived and breathed esports for many years now, so any questions I'm more than happy to answer.
Fantastic, and it's great that you said that, Sam, because there are a few in there specifically around esports in the Q&A section. So we'll come to those in just a second. I did notice that there was one specifically after Carol's presentation by Liz with regards to apprenticeship. So I'm just going to ask that one first to yourself, Carol, if that's okay. I would just say to all the other participants, though, if you do have other questions, please feel free to put those in the Q&A functionality there. Or if you would like to just ask your question in person, please raise your hand and we can come to you as well. So the question for yourself then, Carol, was roughly how many applicants per vacancy do you get for your apprenticeships?
Oh, I don't know. It's really hard to say. I know we're recruiting 58 apprentices for Adastrol this year, but I'm afraid I don't know what the ratio of of applicants to successful placements is, I'm afraid.
Okay, no problem, Carol. I imagine you do get a high number of applicants, I would have thought.
Yes, yeah. I can see the question about work experience. So I should say that we are in our virtual world now. We have run a trial of virtual work experience with Suffolk One, which was very successful, and we have got some opportunities for students to do some virtual work experience with us, and we're being really flexible about that. It doesn't have to be a solid week. It could be a few hours a week, or whatever's going to fit into the kind of the current way of doing things. So we've got I think somebody's already linked to it, that we've got a web page, and again with that information on. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that and get in touch with us if you've got students who you think would benefit. And also, we can also do remote talks if people are interested in just understanding some of the careers available in a bit more depth.
Thanks, Carol. I just wanted to pick up on that because I did notice on your website that there was something called virtual lessons in the box as well that you do. Are you able to just give a little bit more detail for the people from schools that are with us today about those?
Yeah, sure. So when we were looking at virtual work experience, we spoke to some of the schools that we work with to sort of understand, And we understand how important work experience is, and to understand, well, how can we do it in this strange virtual world? So we've got a number of different things. We've got, you know, activities which are a task where it's kind of a week's task, so the student can work on that, and you can check in with us each day and then present back what they've learnt at the end. We've also got things in a box where we can actually lend you some kit in a box, and then, you know, it will come with some instructions, and a student or a group of students can work on that. So it could be a lesson, or it could be, you know, something that happens after school. So again, there are lots of different, they're all described really well on the website. And we're also looking at doing we would call it a hothouse activity, and doing that virtually, where you would put students into teams and they would work together on a problem. So it might be a problem that's tech related, but it could be something that isn't. So they could take on different roles within the team depending on what they're interested in. And again, you know, work together, solve a problem, and then come and present it back to us at the end. And we can do all of that via, you know, Teams or Zoom or Google Classroom, whichever platform.
Fantastic, thanks, Karen. I think on your webpage there is a link, isn't there, if a school is interested?
There is, yeah, to get in touch with us. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And one of the nice things about the virtual world is it doesn't matter where you are. There's no travel problems.
Thank you, Carol. Just a question for Tim now, actually. Tim, so the ICT digital sector is obviously one of the growth sectors that's been identified by the New Anglia LEP, but also clean energy is another sector as well. Yeah. Are those two sectors in any way collaborating, and how do you see them getting together over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, well, that is a great question. So there's a two-part answer. I think, yes, we are collaborating as sectors, but I think it's fair to say we're probably, as sectors, only just beginning to do so. So, you know, I mean, the way I describe it, it's a bit like Carol's example of the you know, the purple people and the red people and the blue people. You know, I think of it as tribes. You know, there are tribes of industry professionals, say in energy, and there are tribes of industry professionals in digital. And, you know, up until pretty recently, there hasn't been that much crossover. And I think clean energy, well, let's break that down. So in this region, we have clean energy production in offshore renewable energy, wind farms, we all know about that. And there's lots of jobs related to building those wind farms, maintaining those wind farms particularly. And increasingly, those jobs are going to have a digital component. So, for example, it might be data scientists analyzing how those things are performing, but it might also be people who run a small maintenance craft, doing some analysis on what they need to do in terms of sort of maintenance, you know, planned or otherwise. And then, of course, you know, you've got, you know, Sizewell B, potentially Sizewell C, you know, tons of jobs, whether it's in construction or on-site communications or transport, you know, logistics planning to get all the vehicles to and from the site, you know, and I could go on. I mean, those are just some obvious examples. But I mean, I think, you know, industry sectors, whether it's tech, energy, manufacturing, healthcare, you know, people tend to operate in their silos until they have to change that behavior. And obviously digital, particularly Carol's mentioned AI and data science and the Internet of Things and quantum computing, and all of these are sort of very high level, disruptive, big global factors that mean that there's going to have to be more of it in future. So, for example, at the moment, so techies, we're working quite closely with some of the kind of major anchor employers in clean energy in the region, also with some of the local authorities, the LEP and others, to try and bridge the gap. And, you know, I mean, another great example of this that came up last week is kind of partly related to energy. There's now a bid for a free port to be created at Port of Felixstowe, Port of Harwich, you know, so that sort of Stour, Orwell estuary, all the ports around that. I mean, that free port will be, as well as, you know, will unlock innovation. And Port of Felixstowe has just successfully got some funding from government to explore the use of AI as it relates to cranes and how cranes kind of operate on a 5G testbed. It's a very specific example but it means that the digital sector, logistics sector, probably the energy sector, all kind of need to come together. And my view, going back to the purple people, is that the kinds of people who will be successful in future in business will be adaptable, multi-skilled, have some sort of digital skills, but also have the team working skills, the problem solving skills to be able to move elegantly between these different domains and disciplines.
Thank you very much, Tim. Just a question for yourself now, Sam. So we've had a couple with regards to esports. So first one is, what's been the reaction to schools? We noticed from your website that they're looking to set up a secondary school esports league. And then the second part for you is, where should students look for vacancies in esports?
That's great. So as far as we go, generally reaching out to schools, once we do actually kind of get a connection and kind of get talking about our esports league, and especially what we can do for students, it is normally a good relationship. We can talk about how to move forward and how to get, as many students as possible signed up. Other than that, I do think there is still a bit, like I said, a negative stigma. So a lot of people will say, oh, this may be distracting from other work, etc. But it is kind of the same kind of extracurricular that we do often see with other sports and such as like football clubs, etc. But obviously we do understand that schools especially do have to limit their extracurricular at the moment. So a lot of it has been through just advertising ourselves to students themselves, just saying it's free to sign up. You just have to register that you are part of a school, age 13 to 18. But we would like to create better relationships with schools so we can talk to them. Hopefully once COVID blows over, that there would be more workshops we can do potentially, just ways to better educate. Bob, what was the second part of the question?
Sorry, Sam, it's where would students go to look for vacancies within esports?
Vacancies within esports. Yep. So a lot of the best ways are generally through social media, to be honest. And I know it seems, it's not the norm of, maybe the likes of LinkedIn or looking for general job applications on the likes of Indeed, etc. But that's where most people around esports are active, and it is very much ask and you will succeed kind of industry. If you generally look for ways to take part, that is what people look for. You look for people with a lot of passion and a lot of people who are more willing to get involved. And obviously with students, when you don't expect students to have, this big line of work history or anything like that. But with it being an industry about students and young people, it's the perfect age to get involved, and it's just a great way to go for it. So I'd say message your favorite team or the people that within esports. But there are sites such as Hit Market Jobs, which do have these vacancies that are available, which any kind of esports organization can apply for, whether it's voluntary, freelance, or a full paid position. They'll advertise anything they need on there. But I think a lot of students who are already aware of esports will already know how to get involved themselves.
Thanks, Sam. And sorry, there's just a follow-on question for you from Karen. So, in your experience, what would be the year group of for students to enter the UK Esports League? Our local FE college launched its Esports Level 3 diploma this year, and this could be a good opportunity for a link up.
So, like I said, for us, we're very open to any kind of age of any students. So our main focus at the moment is a secondary school league. But other than that, we do go on to colleges, and there is already established leagues in universities, etc. So as long as there's someone who's got the passion to want to join a league or get involved, we're more than happy to accommodate that. And like I said, specifically for us, we do want to keep it above the age of 13. And that is normally where you find that the interest in esports does begin, rather than just a kind of casual play, which a lot of people do. It's kind of where that people want to hone that competitiveness, which we do see, like I say, in secondary school, where people go towards and football and rugby and other things that they may be interested in. As far as it goes to establishing a league or kind of what we're appealing to, getting involved in the esports industry itself, I'd say 16 onwards is normally what you'd kind of expect. more of the younger demographic are more eager just to play and get involved and just pursue their passion. It would normally take on freelance roles in kind of mentoring roles at the age of 16 to kind of give students that opportunity to see what it's like working in esports. And then normally we would look for 18 and above for full-time paid roles or being involved directly in our own business. But that is generally what you look for people trying to get involved in a managerial or more of a like leadership role. It would be at least 16 we would start talking to them about that, then 18 for a full-time role.
That's great. Thank you very much, Sam. And then we've got quite a broad question that I'm going to present to all of the panel here, but I'm going to start with yourself, Karen, if that's okay. What most excites you about the digital sector currently?
So there's lots of opportunity. I mean, I love technology, and I think this, technology's really changed our lives, over time, or overall time, but particularly over recent years, and I think has the opportunity to kind of continue to do so. So being a part of that for me is really exciting, and I think that it's because it's constantly changing. Then there's so many opportunities, and there are opportunities. In a year's time there'll be opportunities we haven't even considered. I mean, I think esports is a really great example of, you can have a career in esports. I don't think you could have a career in esports probably about Sam will correct me if I'm wrong, probably five years ago or so. You probably couldn't do that.
Yeah,
and that's a really great example of how things change and how things change really fast. So that's what makes it exciting for me.
Thank you, Karen. I suppose that also just highlights the point Tim was making there about flexibility as well, and that continual lifelong learning and adaptability and other essential soft skills as well. I'm going to come to yourself actually then, Tim, just the same question. What is it at the moment in the digital sector that most excites you?
Well, that is a very broad question. I mean, I think there's a sort of general, there's a couple of general answers to that, which are sort of fairly, possibly slightly abstract. I'm not going to talk about particular technologies because, it sort of goes without saying, and, for anyone who kind of watches the news or, is alive, that there's a lot of good stuff going on around, the deployment of kind of ethical AI in many industries, government, industry, people's lives. That's very powerful. I mean, but so there's all the tech stuff. I'm not going to talk about that. In my view, is the most exciting thing about it is that as a sector, or as a set of capabilities, tech, digital is a set of capabilities which increasingly people have. It's essentially, it's a rising tide that lifts all boats. So, yes, there might be some businesses out there that will be disrupted by technology if they haven't been already. We recognize that. We recognize that automation and AI and so on pose some big questions. But essentially, for the economy and for people and so on, it is a good thing. As a sector, it's getting bigger and more and stronger locally. And probably the kind of last thing I'd say about it is that I think for this area, Norfolk and Suffolk particularly, historically a bit of an underdog in tech. We've got Cambridge down the road, pretty well known globally. We've got London down the world, third biggest tech cluster in the world. It's quite easy to get an inferiority complex about our sector locally, notwithstanding the 4,000 people at Adaplay Park, all the creative startups in Norwich, there's a ton of stuff. But the point is, because we're not as big as the others, doesn't mean that we can't be the best at certain things. And I think where we will be most successful is in areas like collaboration, innovation, inclusivity, relevance to our local industries. We're not going to create the next Facebook in Norfolk and Suffolk. We're not going to create the next EA, I doubt. We're not going to create the next Amazon. We've got all those things already. We don't need them anymore. But we can create businesses that have good jobs for good people, for local people, that attract industry talent from around the world, that are, that are in the character and the spirit of this part of the world, which is very entrepreneurial, but also very grounded. So, I think we've got a sector that's differentiated from other parts of the UK and the world. and it's just going to get bigger. I mean, it's already big. If you try to estimate it in terms of the sort of the ICT digital element within all of industry and business in the UK, I mean, what industry is there that doesn't have a digital element these days? There aren't any. So that's my very long-winded answer to that question.
No, thank you for that, Tim. And I think also it highlighted there the opportunities for progression with regards to social mobility. I mean, obviously in Norfolk and Suffolk, we've got 2 opportunity areas in Ipswich and Norwich, which were identified as areas of low social mobility. So talking there about well-paid jobs for a wider expanse of people as well. So I think and that's an opportunity there as well. Sam, so same question to you as well. Sorry, broad question again, but what is it that most excites you about the digital sector at the moment?
Well, obviously coming from the esports background, I would say that it's the perfect opportunity as everyone goes more digital, the more esports gets seen by the mainstream and, you know, by the general population. So I'm sure there was someone mentioned in the chat there about there being a program on BBC about an esports team, which was XL, the one I previously mentioned, partner with BT. It's very similar to that. You know, people aren't aware of how big esports is, but really, if we do look at the kind of digital sector and the online world, esports is a powerhouse, whereas, you know, regularly a lot of people aren't very familiar with it. So I think it's very exciting that more people are going to be aware of that. But it is quite hard to say because we already are very much involved digitally, but it comes to things like this when there are the likes of, unfortunately, a pandemic. Esports still goes on as usual, and it's still there for everyone to participate in. It's still completely open and as accessible as ever. So as we go more digital, I hope that the esports industry is going to continue to expand, and of course more jobs will come as of that, and not just founding organizations and businesses, which are perfectly doable from a bedroom, for example. It's going to be very accessible to working remotely and just creating an industry that's going to benefit everyone, as well as students and people who are already involved in the industry.
Thank you very much, Sam. And there's a really interesting question here that I can see Tim is typing away on. So I'm going to save your fingers, Tim, and just ask if you can maybe come in and respond to this one. So for a question from Rich, given that a huge diversity of tech roles are embedded across so many sectors, is the tech sector too broad a term for education and inspiration purposes? Do we need a much more defined set of job roles and examples in education based on skills and interests to try and fill the tech pipeline for 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, it's such a great question. It's the sort of question that I kind of like spend a lot of my time trying to come up with answers to and trying to explain, I think. So I think that's right. I think that the traditional definition of the tech sector, by which I would probably take to mean the software industry, has kind of, you know, it's kind of collapsed in on itself over the last 15, 20 years, because, you know, you've got the mobile phones industry, you've got the internet, you've got tech as it's deployed in industrial environments, you've got, you know, everyone's using Teams, Zooms and whatever. You know, is that all tech? Yeah, it is. But I mean, again, kind of going back to my initial definition, and I mean, the way I would sort of, I mean, I could share a slide if this would help, just to kind of very quickly summarize this, if I may I?
Please go ahead. Thank you, Tim.
So yeah, so as I said, so this data was from Tech Nation. So it describes kind of the UK in 2017 digital tech economy as 2.1 million jobs, made up of 1 million jobs in digital tech businesses, nearly 2 million digital tech jobs in you know, the UK, and about I think that's about 100,000, isn't it? About 100,000, what I'd say, you know, like tech roles in the digital tech sector. So, you know, BT, for example, all the software engineers who work at Adaplay Park, and a lot of the people who work in Innovation Martlesham, and a lot of the people in Sam's business, you know, they'll be in that purple bit in the middle. But, you know, the right-hand bit of that, there's lots of different types of jobs in digital tech, lots of job roles, and trying to pin those job roles and titles down is a bit of a mug's game, because they're always changing. So, you know, you have things called cybersecurity analysts now. Well, they didn't exist 10 years ago as a job title. You have things called machine learning, you know, machine learning project managers, you know, they didn't exist 10 years ago. So forget trying to do that. I think that's a waste of time. And there are issues like, you know, like sick codes, the way that businesses classify themselves lag behind the industry. So that's not a very helpful answer, but it's a true answer, I think, or a practical answer. And then, I mean, this is just a slide that this was produced by Tech UK, which is the sort of trade body for software companies in the UK. This was actually off the back of Brexit, considering implications of Brexit on tech talent. You know, at each of the levels in that pyramid moving up, you're getting further away from what I would call the traditional software industry into things like architects' practices, shops, construction sites, you know, the military. But they're all tech jobs. They've all, you know, each industry, whether it's healthcare, financial services, marketing, advertising, law firms, will have their own job titles and definitions. The point is that all of these have a digital component now, and most roles have some kind of digital component. It may only be a little bit of what you do, but just being able to use a computer is digital. Being able to do digital marketing campaigns is digital. Being able to code is digital, and being able to analyze a data set is kind of digital as well. So my view is that we just, as an industry, the tech software industry, particularly to IT industry, have to work harder to describe ourselves in a helpful way, and have to do more to play a part in terms of helping other industry sectors understand the art of the possible. But, you know, this is a big question for government. And I think we'll see in the digital strategy that will be published this year, much more of a recognition of these, almost these different flavors of digital, the digital sector and the non-digital sectors, and the interplay between them both.
That was great. Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you for sharing those slides. I've just got a really relevant question on the chat from Carol that I was hoping maybe Carol could come in and answer. What is the panel's view on the future of working from home in the tech sector? Are we going to see even more tech roles based on working from home with even more remote collaboration rather than a return back to the office?
I think we're probably going to see more flexibility. I think working from home is great for work-life balance, and I mean there are times when I've really enjoyed it, but I think a lot of people's jobs involve a degree of collaboration. You know, lots of jobs are a bit of a team game, and it's really hard to collaborate. You know, we use Teams and we use Zoom and we use, you know, Google Meet, whatever the technology is, and it works. But there's some things you cannot substitute for actually just sitting around a table or drawing on a whiteboard together to kind of work something out. So I think we'll see some flexibility in that. I think it's particularly, certainly our company, and I know other parts of industry, there's lots of concern about, you know, people for whom working from home might not be the best thing. So for example, we brought in graduates and apprentices in September who've known nothing else that working from home. They've never been into their office, not met their team face to face. And if you're living in a shared house or still living with your parents and working from your bedroom, that's a very different experience to, you know, somebody later in life who might have their own dedicated office space at home. So there's definitely a need to think about those people. And one of the things that I certainly miss, and every time one I speak to has the same thing, but no one's cracked it yet, is those conversations you have when you go to make a cup of tea, and it's not necessarily somebody you work directly with, but you have a really great conversation about something and maybe it sparks an idea. You really can't replicate those when everyone's working from home. So I think we're going to see a mixture and a lot more flexibility.
Thank you, Karen.
I agree with that, Carol. I think it's going to be I think it will depend is the answer, because, you know, there are a lot of tech roles that have been sort of remote based for years and years. You know, you talk about what was the term? Digital nomads was a term coined a few years back to describe people who basically work in cafes wherever in the world on a laptop. Some of them working in the tech industry. I think the biggest factors here are going to be culture, and probably something around, and linked to that is kind of like when the business or the organization was created, and also how you know, not to put it too be careful what I say, the demographic of the leadership of the companies. My example would be a company that was created in 2020 as a new startup probably will always be effectively a remote working centered organization. A company that was created in 1964, much less likely. It does depend on maturity and scale as well. You know, organizations like IBM, PwC, you know, some of the big consultancies have been experimenting with mass home working for many, many years and do it very well. Other organizations don't. But it actually comes down to, I think, culture. You know, if you've built your business or your organization based around collaboration tools, Team, Monday.com, Asana, Teams, Zoom, etc., you'll be in a good place for collaboration. If you've built your business based around booking meeting rooms and talking at the water cooler and having one-to-ones with your manager in their office, chances are you're having a pretty miserable time at the moment anyway, as is your manager, and that organization will probably fail to adapt in the way that it could do if it had the right tools and culture. And it's not just the tools, it's the culture, the leadership, and all of that. I just think is the biggest factor in all this.
Thank you very much, Tim. I've got a very specific question for yourself here, Sam. So this one is, do you know, are there any HE degrees yet in esports?
Myself, I'm not entirely certain. I know they are definitely pushing for them to be specific esports degrees. I know this a member of our team, Tom. I'm almost certain he took a master's in esports, but I think it's not necessarily its own degree. It was more to do with the business and entrepreneurial side of esports. But even if they're not so much regionally available, I know that in the near future there definitely will be specific esports degrees. I think there's just so much to encompass, you know, the general world of esports. I think my advice specifically to students or to people who are necessarily going to get involved in esports would kind of be to focus on a sector that you are passionate about or aware of. For example, if you wanted to be on the broadcasting team for, say, like the League of Legends World Championships, which, you know, get millions and millions, I know it gets hundreds of millions of Chinese viewers specifically, pursue the likes of broadcasting or you know, filmography, any of these types of things that, you know, can go both ways. It's not only, like I say, a great opportunity for esports, but you've kind of got a general degree that other people in other sectors and other professions would be more than happy to take you on board for having that qualification. So although I think if they don't exist already, they will definitely do shortly. Yeah, I can just see in the chat there are some universities that do offer an esports degree. I'm just saying, like, it's not a necessity to get into esports, but it will definitely give you a good boost in it. Considering it's still very much in its infancy, anyone who's got a degree in esports is going to go very straight to the top of the pile at the moment. But if it's about the youth of today and the students of today, I think esports degrees will be a lot more common, which I don't think anyone would have expected 5 years ago, but I think that is kind of the norm now.
That's great. Thank you, Sam. I'm just conscious of the time. We've just got one more question that I'd like us to get to, and then we'll just wind up. And this is an open question to anyone on the panel who'd like to take a stab at answering this one, because it's quite a challenging question to finish on, I think. But does anyone have any comments or ideas on how we can get young people to think about using tech to help the environment? Tim's nodding if he wants to take that.
I'll happily go. Well, I mean, I think, look, let's assume that young people are pretty tech savvy, whether we recognize that or not, because of all of the above. You know, their consumption of, you know, media tends to be tech enabled. Their gaming, their communications with each other, their learning. So they're probably pretty tech savvy, certainly much more so than me. I'm, you know, absolutely classic Generation X, and I sort of like, I'm not a digital native, so, you know, I'm no expert on tech. However, I think, you know, helping solve problems in the environment or challenges in the environment is about helping solve challenges in the environment, irrespective of technology. Forget technology for a moment. You know, what are the problems? What are the solutions? And, you know, big organizations now increasingly look at this sort of challenge in terms of things like, they look at sort of innovation processes, they look at things like design thinking, which is kind of start from what the problem is that you're trying to solve, and think about the people who are doing the job that is currently not functioning well, or where there's a mismatch, and design a solution around them, whether it uses technology, or whether it uses bits of paper, or I don't know, string or whatever. You know, forget the tech bit. I think that could be a turnoff. By all means, use it in the education system. And Carol and the team at BT know loads about what works in terms of sort of group activities and problem solving. Clearly, there are also, you know, lots of opportunities out there from people like Innovate UK, from Prince's Trust, from other big organizations around engaging young people in science and problem solving. There's some great local businesses like Developing Experts doing STEM, you know, science lessons online. There's loads of stuff. I'm not an expert on the pedagogy of that and how to make that work or how to make that work in terms of engaging young people. But what I would end on this, and I think this is, I've said enough, so I will then shush. But the biggest thing that I've noticed when I go and talk in schools about careers and tech, as I'm asked to do sometimes, is that when you've got a table or a group of kids, and, you know, 2/3 of them look really bored or disengaged or staring out the window, or just even being disruptive, telling them about careers in tech and tech is a waste of time. For those people, I think I found that the most powerful question is sometimes, have you ever thought about starting your own business? Because it's entrepreneurship combined with tech skills that has created the world's most successful companies of the last 20 years. Facebook, Amazon, Google, Netflix, eBay, PayPal, Tesla. But it's the entrepreneurship bit that is the real, that's the gold dust when combined with tech skills. And even if it's entrepreneurship based in an organization, so intrapreneurship, I think that's the big thing that sometimes gets missed. So creating competitions around environmental problem solving with a bit of tech, but a lot more about an entrepreneurial mindset seems to me to be a good approach to that question.
Thank you very much, Tim. And I just want to say a big thank you now to yourself, Carol and Sam, for attending today and giving such wonderful talks as well, and then spending the last half an hour answering some questions from the attendees as well. So thank you very much. Just wanted to reiterate that this session has been recorded as well, so we will be sharing that sometime next week for those people who've attended, if they want to share it with their networks as well. And just final point from me is just to say that we do have the next session tomorrow, which is focusing on clean energy. 3 great speakers as well tomorrow. That session will be starting at 4:30, following the same format with a Q&A panel session at the end. So thank you everyone for attending, and the biggest thanks obviously goes to Tim, Carol and Sam. Thank you so much for your time this evening, and have a nice rest of the evening.